When you look at hyper-personalization and personalization in general, being able to do it at scale is a challenge, it's an opportunity, but it also has increased cost. How should brands track, measure the kind of the causal relationship and look at the ability to drive a return?
Of course, there's going to be a cost. There's an investment you're making when you use hyper personalization, because you have to use advanced technology to do it. So there are various ways we can start tracking it. Some would be more easier to track than others. So of course there's this increase in your average order value as a result of implementing it. There is an improvement in customer sentiment, which is a more a subjective element, but again gives a good gauge of exactly how the customer is feeling, because they can be making purchases or leaving the brand, but the sentiment would really impact in the long term. And of course, more engagement with the loyalty program. Are they accruing their points more regularly? Are they using their redemption? Are you redeeming more regularly? So a lot of that would also show you how the success is being measured.
It's a great question. I think one is to sort of take a big step back and start by identifying whatever the targeted outcome you're trying to drive at a macro level is as a business. So it's great to do very personalized offers, but if they don't tie back to some specific organizational outcome you're trying to drive, like increasing your members that enroll, selling more of a specific product, driving a certain amount of trips with a specific audience. If you don't know that first, it's very difficult to ever say this thing drove that outcome. So that's first and foremost. I think once you have that initial sort of outcome you're trying to drive, use data to understand who represents the best opportunity to drive those outcomes. I think that's the first step that a lot of people jump over. They say, hey, we're going to start with, we need to sell this thing and more of it. And then they go, okay, well, now we're just going to create this hyper-targeted offer and people are going to do it. I think the first thing is use the data, understand who is the best opportunity for you to create that outcome with. And then the second part of that is to make sure you're not cannibalizing some existing behavior. Often we'll see people that can do that type of targeting, but then they're doing it towards somebody that would already be driving that outcome without an offer or without an experience or without bonus points. I think, at the end of the day, having that one-to-one relationship with each member and a platform in place that kind of spans that entire member experience between loyalty and commerce and how they engage with your brand at every touch point allows a transparent way really to track and measure the relationship between the offers and experiences that I'm served inside of a program and the outcomes that you intend to achieve. I think, from a Stuzo perspective, we think very much about this exact thing. And I think it's important for folks that are providers in our space to focus on what the outcomes that we drive are and be able to prove, efficacy of our technology, but also return on investment. We've seen a lot of this in recent past with us, but one of our customers just went live with some of their initial numbers, and it's just an example of how you can create the connection. And that Sefco, which is a fuel and convenience operator in Texas, who just went live, in the first 60 days, they had outcomes where they were measuring against the past program, and they saw things across transactions being up 80%, active members being up 240%, and member enrollments being up 115%. That's how you set a foundation for being able to show that hyper-personalization is driving organizational outcomes.
Oh man, attribution. Whew. It's like the $1 billion question. If I had that answer, I'd be making a lot of money. There are, when you're talking about measurement and impact outcomes, the tangible, quantifiable output of the work that you're doing, there are tons of ways that you could look at measurement. I think that's where the confusion comes from. Is it RFM? Is it we're collecting reviews and now we have all these social KPIs and followers and likes and now we see cross-product purchases. But I think, and because you asked me for the best way to track or measure, I tell you exactly what I tell my clients, which is that you have to understand and ultimately define for your brand what success looks like first. And at Kobie, we have defined the success of loyalty. Our mission is to deliver enterprise value. So for us, all of our initiatives are anchored to that philosophy, and they ultimately all have clear ties to the client's bottom line. So even if we have multiple ways of measuring success and impact, we're still aligning with clients on a hypothesis around X% lift. This is the lift we're looking to see. We activate, implement, and measure against that hypothesis, and then we work together to assess the impact and outcomes. And we do it again and again and again. But I think having a clear definition of what success looks like and anchoring to it is the way I'd describe it.
It is a big challenge, but it's kind of been a challenge like forever, in the sense that, you know, it's tough when you, especially if you don't know consumers, you don't know your consumers very well. You start a loyalty program and the only thing you know about them is since they joined a loyalty program. Well, the only thing you know about the individual specifically is since they joined a loyalty program. You can do personas, you can do research, and you can cast 2,000 responses over 2 million customers and say it's statistically significant or valid and run with that. But that's, you know, that doesn't really mean that you know Mark or you know Carlos. So the way I like to look at it is behavioral change. So if we know what she, he, they did prior to the message or the program or the offer or whatever it is, and then what they did as a result of the message, the program, and the offer. To me, that's the best way of understanding and doing you know, analysis and tracking. I mean, we like to see positive shifts in behaviors. We like to, you know, sometimes if we don't know what they've done before, we look at what program members do versus non-program members. But it might just be the best customers joining the loyalty program. You know, you could try to debunk that. So, you know, but then there's the tried and true measures of tracking metrics like order frequency, AOV, lifetime value, which I already mentioned before. And there's just, you know, so those are certain things. Now there's also the measures of which a lot of my colleagues get into is, you know, emotional measurement. You know, they sense they have a better emotional connection with the brand. You know, the brand providing better experiences that drive heightened emotions and affinity and loyalty. Those are a little softer. Not that they're not valid, they're just a little softer. Behaviors, when you look at actual measurement and movement of the needle is kind of my preferred method.
I think so the traditional methods actually still work very well. I mean, I don't think that so basically it's just that it's the same about measurement. Same thing happens with measurement as is true about responding to real-time intent. So you have to, so in order to respond to real-time intent, you have to sort of have a real-time measurement, okay? And so if you think about it, people like Facebook, for example, pioneered that way, you know, years ago, when they were sort of doing different experiments on different parts of their audience and constantly comparing in real time what's really happening and who's responding better, right? And so I think doing A/B testing, but accelerating it and sort of putting it on steroids, you know, in the real-time world is really one way that we think is a good way to establish what works and what doesn't, you know, in certain contexts, in certain environments, with certain types of audiences, you know, segmented in different ways. So really it comes back to taking the techniques that work in general, like the A/B testing and stats about that, and control groups and so on, and then applying those in much more faster real-time ways in order to be able to respond meaningfully, right, to these interactions, and to tune, you know, things a little bit in real time.